I, Dr. Cancer MD, will be drinking one of my famous, all-natural, organic, and delicious smoothies that... doesn't that look delicious? Alright, let's do some runic stun. Salutations, Globehead Metasheeple. It is I, Dr. Cancer MD. Boy, I sure do feel good after that smoothie from the last episode. Alright, salutations, Globehead Metasheeple. Welcome to Metasheep Slaughterhouse. I'm your host, Dr. Cancer MD, here with another disgusting creation for you. Today, I've got Mikanko Stun. So this deck is very loosely based on some OCG lists that came out back when Mikanko first got released over there. And it's they played it with like Kaiser Coliseum and some other stun cards that we don't have. I haven't seen anyone in the TCG play it any other way than like a going second kaiju deck. No one in the TCG that I've seen has played it as a going first stun type deck, but that's what I'm doing. And a lot of people don't think this deck can go first, but it absolutely can. Without any further ado, let me show you what I've got for Mikanko. Triple copies of Ohime. This is your best card in the deck. This is basically Illusion of Chaos. It's like the Dark Magician card. So it's a ritual monster in your hand. Every turn you get to search for any Mikanko card, but you have to discard on res, so it's not a cost. So if it gets ash, you don't discard. And when it's on the field, it can't be destroyed by battle, and it reflects all battle damage to your opponent, so it's a bit like a Yugioh in that way. And then the other effect it has is it can target an equip spell in your graveyard and equip it to a monster on either side of the field. That effect does not target, it targets the equip spell, it doesn't target on field, so you can get around monsters with targeting protection that way. Ohime, best card in the deck. Then I'm playing triple copies of Hare. This is like one of your main starters besides Ohime. These two make a pretty good two-card combo. This one, when it's equipped with an equip spell, you get to search for another Mikanko equip spell, and then it also has, when it's equipped, it has the same battle protection and battle reflection as Ohime. So a lot of people are playing recently, they're playing Ashoka Pillar as their starter in the deck, and I only own one copy of this card, and I haven't gotten to test it out that much, but I think I'm still going to just leave 3 Hare instead of Ashoka Pillar, because this loses, it feels like it loses a little bit harder to imperm, and when people play Ashoka Pillar at 3, they usually like to cut Hare and Huli down to 1, but I don't know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and I like having multiples of this, and I like drawing this one in my hand. I'm not really sold on Ashoka Pillar yet, but I'll test it out, maybe I'll like it more in the future. So then I play only one copy of Huli. Sometimes I feel like I want more of this card, but you don't really want to open with this one in your hand. You do want to open with Hare. You can still do your end board with this one in your hand, but this one gets you way more follow-up because it'll be in your hand for next turn. This one it doesn't get you the plus in card advantage. So having multiple of this is really nice. What it does is every Mikanko card on your field that's face up cannot be targeted as long as you control an equip spell. And then, of course, it has the same battle reflection and battle protection as the other Mikanko cards. And every Mikanko equip spell protects your monsters from card destruction. So when you have this card and you control an equip spell, it's Dragoon, basically. It's got Dragoon protection. It can't be destroyed by battle. And your opponent can't even target your face-up spells and traps. So just this card by itself is really, really difficult to out. A lot of decks don't have an out to this card in their entire engine. And if they do, it's like 1 or 2 cards, and you can pretty easily disrupt them from making those. So this is the way that you're playing this as a stun deck. You're just kind of turboing into this card and hoping your opponent doesn't have an out to it. It's really, really good. A lot of people underestimate what this deck can do going first, but setting up a ridiculously hard to out beat stick that reflects all battle damage is pretty decent. Triple copies of Fener. Fener synergizes very well in this deck because it provides discard fodder for your Ohime. It obviously is very good going second, breaking boards, and it's good going first too. It provides another interruption. Fener is just really, really nice, and sometimes you need another monster to combo with your equip spells, and occasionally you'll have to bounce your Fener to hand to get Huli on the field. It's kind of a weird play, but it gets you where you need to go. And this card just gets better and better in the format with Mulcharmi, Fuelos, and Perulia being so popular. Not that this deck loses to those at all. This deck doesn't give a crap about those. For hand traps, we got triple copies of Ash Blossom, of course. We got triple copies of The Rock. We got triple copies of Dimension Shifter and triple copies of Infinite Impermanence. So only 12 hand traps is a little light for me. I usually like to go heavier than that, but I couldn't fit Fener without going to 12, and Fener, in my testing, I tried playing without it, and I didn't like it without it. Shifter in this deck is insane. There's another build that goes first, which is like the Nadir's Servant build, and I like that build. I think it's cool, but I prefer Shifter because Shifter doesn't conflict with this deck at all. This isn't a combo deck. You're not doing like crazy combos, you know, with this deck. You're just sitting on Huli plus equip spells and a trap. And so with Shifter, it barely conflicts at all. You can OTK under Shifter, you can set up a board under Shifter, you can set up your follow-up under Shifter. You just really don't give a crap about Shifter, and I don't shotgun it though. Yes, that plays into talents, but the thing about this deck is you need your opponent to have a monster on the field to crash into, and if they just pass with nothing, then that's one of the worst things that they can do for you. It's kind of like Sky Striker in that regard. So you want to commit, wait for them to commit before you Shifter them. Nib also synergizes really well with this deck because you can give your opponent a massive token and then just crash your Mikankos into it to kill them. And there's also a way with your equip spells that you can bounce your own Nib back to your hand, which is just crazy. Your opponent has to deal with a second copy, basically, even after you nibbed them once. A lot of people scoop as soon as they see you bounce your Nib to your hand because they know they have to deal with it again. For draw spells, we got 1 Prosp and 2 Extrav. I'm not a big fan of 2 ofs, but this is like the main banless hit that the deck took, so I just replaced the 2 Lost Prosp with 2 Extravs. Again, the extra deck here is just not super important, so it's fine. It's not my favorite pot, but it gets the job done. So then we got triple copies of Preparation of Rites, just a consistency spell. This is just to see your Ohime. That's it. And this is one of the better cards in the deck. This is your best equip spell, Mikanko Water Arabesque. So if you equip this to a monster, it becomes indestructible by card effects because all the Mikanko equip spells do that. But more importantly, you can activate the effect, bounce the monster to the hand, summon a Mikanko from your deck, and then equip that Mikanko card with this spell. So this card on its own is like a +2 or 3 when it fully resolves. This is how you're breaking boards. You are equipping this to your opponent's monster, bouncing it, summoning Huli, which can't be targeted, and then you're going to try and crash into your opponent's stuff. So, and this is the way that you bounce Nibiru to your hand. If you were playing Bestials, you can bounce a Bestial back to your hand. Card's super nice. Definitely the best equip spell. For the other equip spells, we got 1 Fire Dance. This one is either Monster Reborn or Summon from Hand, and then it equips itself to whatever you summon. And the more important thing about this card is if your opponent doesn't want to commit a monster for you to crash into, if they have anything in their graveyard that can be summoned, you can summon it to their field in addition to your own monster. But you negate its effects. So you just give them some beat stick that they can't use, and then you crash into it. So definitely important. And you only need 1 of that card. I see a lot of people playing multiples of equip spells. Like they play multiples of Fire Dance and multiples of the next one, which is Maya Washidori, which I don't think you need. This one is also Monster Reborn, but it's Monster Reborn from when it's in the graveyard. So you target a Mikanko in your graveyard, reborn it, and then equip it with this, and it's banished when it leaves the field. And then the other thing this card does is it compulses a card on the field in the damage step when any of your Mikankos battles. It doesn't have to be the monster that's equipped with, so any of them battles, you can compulse a card on the field. You can do some funny plays with this. This can also be used to bounce your own Nib back to the hand or whatever. We got 1 copy of Reflection Rondo. This card's basically Snatch Steal for Mikankos. That's pretty much all it does. And I don't play Snatch Steal because I don't feel like it's needed when we already have this. A lot of times you're equipping it from deck with the trap that I'm about to show you in a second. 1 copy of the Great Mikanko Ceremony. This is how you're summoning your ritual monster. We don't play the ritual spell, which I'll talk about why in a second, but this one, it summons a ritual monster from your hand or any Mikanko, ignoring summoning conditions, and then when it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to Foolish Burial any Mikanko card. So this turns your ritual monster into a 1-card combo because you Foolish Arabesque and then use the ritual monster's on-field effect, equip itself with Arabesque, and then Arabesque bounce it to hand, summon Huli, search the trap. So this card basically gives the ritual monster, it's a 1-card combo. You only need 1 of that card too. Sometimes I find myself wanting a second, but not enough to actually play one. I got for the traps 1 copy of Spirit Walk and 1 copy of Mikanko Rivalry. This one's the better trap. This one targets a monster your opponent controls and equips it to your monster as an equip spell, which is just really strong form of removal. It gets rid of things like Mirror Jade without triggering it. It's really strong form of removal, and then its grave effect is you banish it to summon a Mikanko from your banished or graveyard. So you can protect yourself from dying, like if you have nothing else but you have this in the grave, you can summon something. And this is really good for your grind game too, because if your opponent like banishes Huli, or you lose it under Shifter for some reason, you can just banish this to get it back on the field. So it makes Huli all that much more of a pain to deal with because even if they banish it, you can still bring it back. And then Mikanko Rivalry, this one is like a crackdown. You can equip target a monster on the field, either field, and equip an equip spell from your deck to that monster. So a lot of times you'll be equipping the Snatch Steal spell to steal 1 of your opponent's monsters, but you can also get your plays going if you need to equip 1 of your monsters with an Arabesque or something like that. This one also has a grave effect that when an equip spell hits the graveyard, well, this is in the graveyard, you can banish it, add an equip spell from your grave to your hand. So that's cool in the grind game, but doesn't come up that much. This is the card that you go into against Tenpai, because even under their field spell, when you equip them with the Snatch Steal, you can still steal the monster even under the field spell. So if you know you're playing against Tenpai, I would definitely go for this. It makes that matchup a lot easier. Then for Floodgates, because this is a stun deck, we're going first. I got 1 copy of Rivalry, 1 copy of Goes and Match, and 1 copy of There Can Be Only One. So back when these were all unlimited, I just would play 3. There can be only 1 because they're all different types. So this one like directly synergizes with the deck. But once this got limited, I decided to also include Rivalry and Gozen. You might think that these conflict because you can only have 1 Mikanko on the field at a time when you have these. However, when you have Huli on the field and you lock your opponent into 1 monster as well, you kind of just keep poking them with Huli. So it doesn't really matter that you're locked because you're locked under a card that just wins you the game. So, and something cool you can do with these is you can use your Mikanko Washor. If you want to unlock yourself from the floodgates, you can bounce one of your own floodgates to your hand, do some more plays, and then set it, and then flip it again next turn. So that's pretty cool. Then for the extra deck, we got 1 copy of Almirage. Sometimes you need to normal summon, link off, and you summon back the monster with the Washor, the green equip spell. So that's just there for that. We got 1 Haggard Lizard Rose. Sometimes you need to clear the board so you can evenly matched, or sometimes you just need to draw a card, which is cool. Sometimes you need to make SP. You don't need to, but I have one, so why not? 1 copy of Moon of the Close Heaven. I play Underworld Goddess. This lets me make it with less materials, so... 1 copy of Binakashima. This card lets you summon an Xyz monster after you revive a monster from your graveyard and summon one from hand. You can immediately afterwards summon an Xyz monster. This makes you this lets you make a pretty good push in damage if your opponent doesn't want to commit anything, because you get 1500 attack from this, and then you also get to summon the Xyz. And then the other thing this card can do is it can pop a spell or trap on the field when an Xyz monster points to activates its effect. So you can combine that with one of my other Xyz monsters to pop 2 spells and traps, because this deck definitely struggles with back row. Speaking of which, no Nightmare Phoenix, because gotta pop that back row. Deal with an anti-spell fragrance or something. 1 copy of Hida because your main monster is fire. 1 copy of Princess for the same reason. You can make this and revive your monster and get back into the game. 1 copy of Underworld Goddess, like I said, because sometimes we gotta deal with big towers. 1 copy of Super Quant Grand Pulse. So I was playing Breaksword, but I recently cut it for Grand Pulse because the fact that you need to pop one of your cards to pop a card on the field with Breaksword makes it much less efficient. I thought it wouldn't come up that much, but it ended up, like, I would be so afraid to go in this card, it just never came up because I could never really afford to pop one of my cards. So I just put Grand Pulse instead. This one is way more free. It's just MST when you detach. It doesn't need to pop one of your own cards. So this is the card that you can make with the Bujin link pointing to it, and then you can detach and it becomes a double MST basically. So that helps you really clear some back row. And then we got 1 Assur King. This is the way that you go for a game when your opponent doesn't want to commit anything. It takes 3 level 3s, but it is able to swing 3 times, and it increases by 200 attack every time it does, and it's permanent. So it starts off at 21, you swing, it's 23, and then you swing again, and it's 25, and you swing again, and it's 27. So it leaves your opponent on 500 life points if they have no cards on the field. And it's also a monster negate and destroy, so it does not play into Nibiru. And you can just leave this and try to negate their follow-up. So this card's really, really good if your opponent doesn't want to commit anything. I actually found myself making that card a lot of times to close the game. 1 copy of Fortune Tune because we got level 3s, we can force a Zeus play. 1 copy of Downer to overlay for material, and 1 copy of Zeus because it's Zeus. Then 1 copy of Typhon because it's a stun deck, and Typhon just puts in a ton of work in stun decks. So I want to talk about some cards that I didn't play. This is a good Floodgate Defissure. I was considering this, and if I go to a locals that has like a whole bunch of graveyard decks, I might just swap it in. So just another option because it does not conflict with your deck at all. A lot of people were playing Ken and Jen. You used to be able to make Acid Golem and give it to your opponent when Ice Sold was legal using these cards, and apparently you can still do that, but you need to play like a whole bunch of Goblin Biker bricks, and I didn't really feel like bricking. So I just wanted to mention that it's something cute that you can do. So then I have the Nini that I did not play, and then there's another Mikanko Trap that I didn't play, and another Mikanko Equip spell that I didn't play. These work well as like a package where you can use this effect to summon this one from deck and equip it with this card. And basically what that amounts to is this is a compulse and this is like a quick effect steal. So it's the best trap if everything resolves because it gives you 2 disruptions rather than just 1 like the other traps do. The problem is, 1, this loses to Ash. 2, you have to play 3 cards, which is just incredibly bricky, and you have to cut engine or a non-engine for it. And then the other reason is this card plays really heavily into talents, and if you don't make this card, then you often don't even need to play into talents. So this trap is like, it's really good if it all goes through, but it's just inefficient. And then the ritual spell, I don't play. It's kind of sad that you don't play the ritual spell in a ritual deck, but it's just too bricky. It's cool, like you can pop some cards on the field and burn your opponent if everything goes right. It's just too bricky, and it's just not efficient enough. Like, I like it. It would be nice to side it for time or something, but I'm just going to brick on it, and I can't take that risk. So for the side deck, triple Ghost Spell. Labyrinth is an unwinnable matchup. I don't think I've ever beaten that deck with this deck. It's just very unfortunate that Daruma Cannon just murders your deck. But just to try to give me a chance, I play Ghost Spell. Like, this helps with some of your really, really bad matchups. But this deck, if you get paired up against Lab, it's just going to be sad. Like, this deck absolutely murders the meta decks, but if you get paired against Labyrinth, you just pray that you don't. That's all I'm going to say. The deck just naturally loses, and there's not much you can do about it. Triple Cosmic, because we got to get those backer decks. Something I was considering playing also was Runic Destruction instead of Cosmic Cyclone, because even though you give up your battle phase, this deck doesn't necessarily like need to kill you in one turn. It can, but I'm playing obviously like a stun version of it, so I don't really care about that. And Destruction, it prevents you from losing to Feather Duster because you can just summon Hugin, banish that, and avoid dying from Feather Duster. Lightning Storm and Feather Duster are also like really big problems, so I might swap Cosmic out for that package in the future. It's just something spicy I've been considering. Triple copies of Evenly, you know, yeah, this is an OTK deck, but again, I'm playing a stun version, so you don't need to have your battle phase. This just clears boards. Triple copies of Grave of Super Ancient Organism. Some of your harder matchups often play, like Branded's really hard. Anything with like fusions can be difficult sometimes because they just don't care about your interruptions. They have a lot of gas. So this gives me a really good out to them. And then like Centurion, you can still set this into a Centurion board and flip it and win, even if they set up their full board. So this card's just like super, super nice. It conflicts with your Ritual, but that does not matter at all. You're not even gonna, the Ritual goes back to your hand on the end phase, so it doesn't really matter. Last card in the deck is triple copies of Solmn Judgement. Again, this is just here to stop the Evenlies, the Dusters, the Lightning Storms. And I recently cut Iron Thunder, so this isn't in the deck. I cut it for the Grave, but I'm considering putting it back in just because I don't want to lose to those Evenlies. But that's another reason why I might try out the Runic Destruction package to deal with the Feather Dusters. It won't deal with Evenlies, obviously. So that's the deck profile. Remember, Chris Hansen is always watching you, and apparently this pufferfish is also watching you. Metasheep Slaughterhouse, the Earth is flat. It's not a globe. And remember to dislike the video, unsubscribe, leave a pissed off comment, send it to all your worst enemies. And yeah, Metasheep Slaughterhouse, signing off. Bye.